Have you realized how it seems like there's a new roguelike dropping every single day at this point? Maybe that's because there kinda is? Over 1,000 roguelikes came out on Steam this year alone. So today I want to cut through the noise and talk about 3 insanely addictive ones that are a step above the rest, as well as one brand new early access title with a lot of potential that practically everyone is sleeping on, but you really shouldn't be. Starting with the game that fixed the Gungeon gameplay loop for me. Now look, as a roguelike fan, I know saying I don't like Enter the Gungeon would absolutely have me like this in some circles. But I doubt I'm entirely alone, and Voidigo tweaks just enough about the formula to earn itself a spot in my Steam library. Partially due to the sheer personality oozing out of every inch of it, and mostly because of the movement. Because, of course, the movement is a big part of how Voidigo stands out from games like Gungeon or Nuclear Throne. Not only do you have a sprint button, which is rare for top-down bullet hells like this, but your dodge is more of a Goomba stomp that you can use to both jump over bullets and crush enemies. Sometimes all you really need is a small change for a gameplay loop to click for you, and honestly, the sprint and the jump are what did it for me with this style of roguelike. Voidigo is a very fast-paced game, and you'll find yourself darting between rooms, dodging bullets as you work your way towards each stage's boss fight, which is where the game continues to set itself apart. Unlike, say, Slay the Spire, you're not picking from various routes trying to line up the perfect combination of encounters and rewards. You're dropped into a series of rooms, tasked with exploring them, looking for new weapons, artifacts, and most importantly, boss crystals. You see, your mission, if you choose to accept it, is to hunt down a roaming boss from across each tile set and, do what you do best. Before you get there, though, you have to find each of the crystals randomly placed around the map and destroy them, with each crystal stripping the shield from part of the boss's health bar. But because the boss roams, you'll often find yourself in these situations where you're minding your own business, clearing a room, hunting for resources before all of a sudden... And now you're in it. You can choose to fight the boss head on when it appears, but you can also retreat to find more resources, or even just a better room to fight in. The thing is though, the boss can do the same thing, running away to a different part of the map to heal if you're really pressuring it, leading to this fun push and pull dynamic as you alternate between chasing the boss and being chased. Admittedly, the chase across the map got a little old at times during early access, cause shockingly, running back and forth through empty rooms gets kinda old. But the addition of teleporters in every room makes it flow a lot better. It's worth noting that the game is balanced around the fact that dropped resources don't expire, so if you find an early potion, ammo, or even a weapon, you can leave it where you found it while you clear the other rooms, then circle back to grab it whenever you need it. This little extra layer of strategy when it comes to deciding what you need now versus later really does a lot for bringing the boss fights together, and the whimsical vibe does the same for the rest of the game. Every gun, every enemy, every animation really has a lot of wry humor behind it. And half the fun of picking up a new weapon is enjoying the personality behind its animations. A specific style of personality that makes so much sense if you spend 5 minutes on the developer's YouTube channel.
Yeah.
We're working very hard.
They seem like they're having a lot of fun, not gonna lie. Voidigo was built by this small team called Cinework, and honestly, I'd recommend checking out their channel too if you like the energy behind Voidigo, because you can tell they really put a lot of themselves in the game. But anyway, for those of you who like long-term progression, it's got a camp to build out using resources from your runs to unlock new characters, starting loadouts, and even new areas to explore. It's pretty cool, but I imagine experienced roguelike players will run out of stuff to unlock relatively quickly in the grand scheme of things. Not that the game is short or that there isn't stuff to grind, there absolutely is, it's just a bit more focused on collecting than it is on massively expanding your stats or playstyle options. In my opinion, that's not really an issue though. To be fair, I'm a very intrinsically motivated person in general, so this is by no means the gospel, but I feel like the best roguelikes don't need insane long-term progression. It's kind of all about the core gameplay loop. I'm still playing games like Griftlands or Skull the Hero Slayer years after I've 100% of them because I really just love the flow and the variety of their roguelike experience. And in my mind, that ability to hold your attention after you no longer have carrots to chase is what separates good roguelikes from great ones. Luckily, for those of you who do really love that long-term progression though, I've got just the perfect thing. After all, it'll take you an eternity to unlock everything in Astral Ascent, but you'll have a damn good time in the process. It's a side-scrolling platformer that might remind you of Dead Cells or Hades, but with a style that's all its own, thanks in no small part to how much you can mold your moveset set to your specific needs. When it comes to Astral Ascent, it's all about the customization, movement, and progression. You have 4 characters to choose from, each with highly distinct gameplay styles and their own unique spells for players to pull from alongside a general shared pool. Spells that kind of work like active items that you cast after charging your mana with basic attacks, which I love because I've always been a big fan of gameplay loops that reward your ability to play effectively, instead of being overly reliant on cooldowns or something, like certain trash fires that shall not be mentioned. Anyway, when it comes to these spells, you can cycle them as you please, but they each have to be used at least once before you can refresh the stack. Where things get kinda interesting though is in the affixes, or gambits as they're called here. You essentially mold each spell into the ideal shape for your run. These don't alter the direct behavior of spells so much as they add to it, and will do things like spawn thunderstorms on hit or add status effects to your attacks. So a major focal point for your runs will often be playing matchmaker between your spells and gambits. For example, you may choose to put your best gambits on a spell with low mana cost so they're easier to spam, or use gambits with low chances to trigger on multi-hit attacks to maximize your odds. It's an excellently crafted system that makes fighting your way through each stage incredibly satisfying, with the enemy variety and tight balancing doing plenty to keep you on your toes. And listen, Astral Ascent's general enemies are great, and only get better in the end game, but the game really shines when it comes to its boss fights. The goal of Astral Ascent is to defeat the 12 Zodiacs in an attempt to escape your mystical prison, and these fights that serve as punctuation at the end of each stage are brilliant. The 12 Zodiacs all have insanely fun, high-paced, intense movesets to play around that get even crazier once you reach that endgame I mentioned, and begin experimenting with Astral Ascent's version of the Hades Heat system. A system designed to keep the game fun long-term as it steadily increases the difficulty alongside adding to both the general enemy and boss movesets, as well as opening up another progression tree that allows for some really nice player expression in how you choose to spec out your character before a run. The skill points you earn from pushing higher difficulties are just a really nice incentive to continue progressing, much like the mirror and alternate weapon forms were in Hades. Like I said, it's gonna take a while to unlock everything, with cosmetics found randomly on stages, dozens of spells, passives, and more. And as a roguelike in general, there's just a really incredible amount of replayability, with summons, auras, signature attacks, and more to build synergies upon throughout your run. And of course, none of this would work without the fluid, satisfying combat mechanics that tie the experience together. The minute-to-minute combat is absolutely the star of the show here, just like it is in Roboquest. Now, across years of early access, none of these games have been perfect, but Roboquest has been the biggest uncertainty of the bunch. Out of all of them, it's probably the one that's gone through the most extensive reworks. It's been in some very rough spots, but the devs have always been very receptive to feedback. So while Roboquest has always had potential, it's been really hard to say if it would deliver. Not that I've ever so much doubted that the game would make it across the finish line so much as whether it would be something I wanted to play when it did. But I am so happy to say they absolutely nailed the landing. Roboquest is a Doom-inspired movement shooter with an incredible arsenal that's all about speed, precision, and style. It's a very skill-centric roguelike in the sense that avoiding bullets while hitting your shots will almost always be more important than your build at the end of the day. That's not to say there isn't much going on in that department though. The build diversity brings tons of replayability fueled by 6 distinct classes with unique playstyles driven by their primary and secondary skills. If you've played Gunfire Reborn, it's kinda like that, just way faster. The thing is though, Roboquest kinda hides a lot of what makes it so special. For example, you'd be surprised how often I've heard stuff like this.
Movement is a bit slower than you'd expect from a game like this, but I mean, you're not exactly playing as V1 here. Robo's a thick mother who deals a decent amount of damage by landing on folks' head like a goddamn Goomba stomp. He needs a lot of room for his schmovement, but he's still mobile enough to get around with full mid-air control, letting you dodge projectiles that you see coming towards you. There is a sprint and a slide that I really only found useful outside of combat.
And look, I don't bring that clip up to call anyone out. In fact, they aren't alone in feeling that way. I've seen people describe Roboquest as slow for years, and I think that actually speaks volumes for how much fun this game can be. If people can largely ignore what I would argue is one of, if not the main feature, and still have a phenomenal time, you've got a special game on your hands. And that's probably because, unlike a lot of movement-centric games, it's still really fun to play Roboquest more methodically. If this speed isn't, well, your speed, you just don't have to do any of this, and you'll still have a good time. Weapons are snappy, and the variety provides an insane amount of options for engaging fights any way you want. Most levels even have this surprising degree of verticality, allowing you to take to the rooftops and deal with enemies at your leisure. Aside from the movement though, Roboquest genuinely adds a lot in its structure. In Voidigo, you're given a random world from a pool each time you progress. In Astral Ascent, you follow a set path as you try to escape. But Roboquest puts a series of branching pathways in front of you and tells you to choose how you want to reach the final boss. Initially, most paths will be closed to you and you'll need codes or keys to open them. Some can be bought, but some require quests ranging from relatively simple things like saving up mid-run currency to brightening a sad robot's day. The more of these puzzles you solve, the more access you'll gain, not just to alternate areas with their own enemy types, challenges, and secrets, but new characters and upgrades to your movement mechanics like a super jump and a jetpack. I highly recommend finding as many of these as you can as quickly as you can, because Roboquest truly becomes an entirely different game once all the gadgets, secret weapons, and hidden paths are unlocked. Honestly, you should just try the demo for yourself so you can feel just how smooth this gunplay, the movement, how smoothly the combat in general just flows. Who doesn't like a good demo after all? In fact, I really wish Entropy Effect had one, because this developer decided to turn one of my all-time favorite fighting games into a roguelike that I feel like you have to play for yourself to get a feel for. Now, here's where my bias comes in a little bit, because I love fighting games. I've got a custom stick, I go to the FGC Super Bowl every year, and while most of you have probably heard of Evo Moment 37, my favorite Evo moment is the time this absolute legend Galileo was one solid hit away from losing it all, yet clawed his way out of the loser's bracket in one of the most incredible comebacks in gaming.
I don't think so.
Is it possible?
I don't think this will
Is
kill.
this enough to kill? It's
Wait,
gonna kill!
it's doing lots of damage. It's gonna kill!
He's done it again!
He's done it again!
He's done it again!
This moment has lived in my head rent-free for almost 10 years. I am so glad I was there. It's inspirational levels of endurance, of skill. It's a rock faced with an immovable object. They go to tournament point like 4 times. It's... What were we talking about? Oh yeah, I really fucking love BlazBlue, and someone turned this into a roguelike, and it kinda fucks. I'm over here kinda in shock because these characters feel like perfect. Like the feel of a Hakumen counter, of having to control New 13 spacing, Noel's gun kata. It's all here. It's kinda crazy how on point it is. There is so much love here, right down to the way these characters move, right down to the way Hakumen feels kind of awkward yet wildly powerful with the right setup in the highly specific way that Hakumen always just kinda does. They really get it. Of course, it's not one-to-one, it's a roguelike, not a fighting game after all, but it gets about as close as I imagine you can without making it completely unapproachable for non-fighting game fans. So no worries, there's no tiger knee inputs here, it's all directional, and the game doesn't overwhelm you with an entire kit at once either. That's where the roguelike comes in actually. You start each run with a bare bones set of attacks, and as you progress, you get to unlock additional parts of each character's move list. So you never have the full thing at once, and kind of have to start making combos with what you've got on the fly. Combos that are surprisingly crucial for dealing with enemies and bosses alike. They actually just added this guard break mechanic where if you do enough damage fast enough to a boss, you can close that entire fight out, but if you drop your combo, they can recover and counter. It's relatively forgiving, but I cannot tell you how hype it is to hit confirm a guard break into a kill on the fly. And really, the main reason you're playing this game is for the S-tier combat, but as a roguelike, it also has this really interesting mechanic I haven't seen before. Tell me if you have, but after you finish a run, your character essentially turns into an assist that you can choose to have join you for future runs. The further you make it, the more buffs your assist will give you, and not only that, but your assist also gets ported to the game's dedicated boss arena where you have 1 life, no healing items, and have to take down a super boss in order to earn unlock tokens for new characters. It's such a cool evolution to the roguelike lifecycle. Adding this extra layer where your runs and how you build your character actually adds value to the future. It really motivates you to try and beat the game with each character to see which kind of assist you can craft and how that'll help you push into harder content. This game just does so much right, but it's also been one of the most confusing gameplay experiences I've had all year because aside from the characters, this game has literally nothing to do with BlazBlue. This isn't the world of BlazBlue. These weird robots aren't BlazBlue robots. There's no BlazBlue music. Nothing in this game, aside from the playable cast, has anything to do with BlazBlue, and it's just wildly jarring. So jarring, in fact, that if there was any less love and respect for these characters or any less polish in the combat, I would maybe assume this was some weird asset flip, But no, it's fully licensed, full of quality, and improving at a rapid pace. So while Entropy Effect is far from perfect, I'd argue it's absolutely worth your time gameplay-wise. And to be fair, no game in this video is perfect. I've got gripes with all of them, but out of the over 1,000 roguelikes released this year, I'm sure there's some of the best out there. But I'm not sure if I would say they're the best ones. It's really hard to say what is in a year with games like Wild Frost, the deck builder that cured my Slay the Spire addiction, or Deadlink, another insanely impressive movement shooter, or Moonring, the bump-based love letter to Ultima that's literally free and incredible and practically no one is talking about it. But I will be very soon, alongside a lot of the other insanely brilliant games that have likely gone overlooked in the onslaught that is 2023. So subscribe and stay tuned, because I plan to tell you about some of the hidden gems you may otherwise never hear about. In the meantime though, if you love genuinely unique gaming experiences, maybe check out this indie RPG one incredibly passionate man spent 15 years perfecting. Or Jusant, the stunningly atmospheric traversal experience that's so easy to get lost in. And if you love any of the games that I talked about today, or have one to share that you want me to take a look at next, let me know down below and let's talk about why it's fun.